Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with, from Decca Eloquence in Australia, the Vienna Octet box. This is one of two. There's also the new Vienna Octet box, which we will get to in due course. This is 27 CDs of famously marvelous chamber music. I mean, the Vienna Octet was a wonderful group. We talked about reference recordings from the Mozart's trio for like all piano trios because they were one of the few regularly constituted piano trios. I mean, that's what they did, and they discovered a lot of interesting music. Well, there is tons and tons and tons of chamber music for mixed ensembles that don't get to have like their own standard grouping. And the Vienna Octet was actually a fairly loose organization that could play anything from a sextet to a septet to an octet to a nonet to a dectet to a whatever tet. You know, they did tets, lots of tets, tets for numerous people. That's the bottom line. But the basic octet was well, let's see who they are here. Does it say who they are here? No, it doesn't say who they are here. Well, it doesn't matter because very few of these pieces are actually octets. Some of them are. There are some very famous octets. But, you know, the octets can be a double string quartet. They could be mixed strings and winds. And the Vienna Octet sort of like varied depending on who they needed. And they recorded in mono and stereo for quite some time. Let me see how many people we have here. Well, the original group, let's see, is this an octet? No, it's a septet. You see, try and find an octet. That's the problem. Here they are, the original Vienna Octet. There they are. That's them. The original Vienna Octet. We get a picture. And it looks like, well, you see a violin, and there's a horn in there somewhere, and a bassoon, and you know, just like all kinds of instruments. So there you go. Doesn't matter who they were. They were Viennese. Members of the Vienna Philharmonic is basically where they came from. And they were wonderful. They were absolutely wonderful. And so in order to enjoy this box of tets, all we need to do is to tell you what is inside. There's quite a bit of duplication, actually. There are 27 CDs. 27 CDs of tets. And here we are. Are you ready? Konrad and Kreutzer, who lived from 1780 to 1849. A very good composer, principally violin music. Spent a bunch of time, I believe, at the Paris Conservatoire and wrote a textbook on violin playing. Well, this is his Grand Septet in E-flat major on CD1, coupled with the Beethoven Septet in E-flat major, Opus 20, which was Beethoven's most popular work in his lifetime, which of course caused Beethoven to hate it because he didn't consider it to be important, but it was beautiful. And that's what matters. It's lovely and delicious. CD2, the Mendelssohn Octet. Oh, these are recordings, by the way. These are the monos they start with, which date from 1951 or so. Yeah, 1948 we're going back to, 1950, 1953, somewhere in there. So you've got the Mendelssohn Octet on CD2 with the Schubert Octet. Oh, gosh. These are wonderful works. These are like the two greatest octets by anybody. The Mendelssohn, which is all strings, and the Schubert, which is a mixed ensemble. Let's see, it's two violins, viola, cello, double bass, clarinet, bassoon, and horn. And they are fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So this is from 48, 49. Then we've got Mozart's Divertimento number 17, which is sort of chamber music-y thing for strings and horns. And the Divertimento number 10, which is also for strings and horns. And let's see, Schubert on CD4, the Trout. I think there are like 10 Trouts in this set. There's a lot of Trouts. The Trout Quintet, over and over. Willy Boskovsky, by the way, the famous conductor of all those Vienna Philharmonic Strauss collections, he was the principal violin in most of these performances. And let's see, who else have we got here? Louis Spohr, his Nonet. Spohr was wonderful at mixed media chamber music works. You know, it's fun to make fun of, it's easy and fun to make fun of Spohr, to ridicule him, because he was really a very serious composer who was like, not always very good, very notey, and into the chromatic sludge here and there. But he was a brilliant composer in certain challenging areas of the repertoire, and mixed ensemble chamber music was one of them. He wrote wonderful pieces, including his Nonet in F major, which is gorgeous. Then we've got the Brahms Clarinet Quintet with Alfred Boskovsky playing clarinet, one of the Boskovskys, along with Willie and other strings. And this was from, 53. And the Mozart Clarinet Quintet with the same folks. CD 6, another Schubert Octet, and this is 1954. So you're going from 78s to LPs, mono to stereo. So you're going to get the same stuff. Another Schubert Octet and Beethoven Septet. Well, you can't have too many of those, can you? From 54. Then the Dvorak String Quartet number 10, the Slavonic Quartet with the Boskovsky Quartet, which has nothing to do with the octet, does it? But it's great to have that stuff, too, because they play all that music with a certain Viennosity, which we all love to hear. Mozart, Divertimento number 15 for strings and horns, and Divertimento number 1 for strings and horns, and clarinets, too. Oh, that's exciting. The Mozart clarinet, Divertimenti are delicious and really not appreciated as much as they should be, I think. Then we've got the Mozart Quintet for piano and winds. It's usually coupled with the Beethoven, but not here. Here you get the trio for clarinet, viola, and piano, known as the Kegelstadt Trio. The clarinetist is Alfred Boskovsky again. Then we have the Spohr Octet. Spohr wrote tets. He wrote septets, nonets, octets, all that stuff. So we have his octet, which is for strings and double bass, clarinet, and horn. And it's also delicious, just like his nonet was. And Marcel Poot, well, that's interesting. Marcel Poot was a Belgian composer who lived from 1901 to 1988. It's a contemporary guy, and he wrote an octet for basically the same ensemble as the Spohr, except it has a clarinet. You all know the Spohr had a clarinet. Horn, double bass. What else? Bassoon. He threw in a bassoon. Spohr doesn't have a bassoon. Then we have another Schubert octet. Now this one is from 1958, and we're in the stereo era, which is finally about time. So it's, just the Schubert octet. How many of that does that make? 3 of them now so far? And another Trout quintet with Clifford Curzon playing the piano. We talked about this in the Clifford Curzon box. It's in there too. So if you have that, you got it. If you don't have it, you're in good shape. Beethoven Septet. There we go. CD 13. The Beethoven Piano and Wind Quintet. And let's see, the Spohr Octet. Another Spohr Octet. Oh my goodness. Mozart Divertimento number 17 for strings and horns. And the Divertimento in D major, Kochel 136/125A. Doesn't that tell you a lot? Isn't that marvelous? That's just for strings. It's basically for a string quartet plus double bass. Yeah, like eine kleine Nachtmusik, actually, but that's not what it is. The Brahms Clarinet Quintet again with Alfred Boskovsky. But Willie Boskovsky has dropped out of the ensemble at this point. Heinrich Behrmann, Clarinet Quintet number 3, only one movement, the Adagio. Don't ask me why. Mozart Divertimento 15, Kochel 287, and Michael Haydn's Divertimento in G major. Well, that's nice. Those are also for strings and horns. Every so often an interesting, unusual composer creeps into the usual Schubert, Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms sort of collection there. Mozart Clarinet Quintet. Again, where are we now? We're in the 1960s. So we're into the stereo era. Mozart Divertimento number 10. Mozart Divertimento number 5 with a couple marches added to it. And the Cassation in B-flat major. A cassation is the same thing as a divertimento or partita. A multi-movement extravaganza that usually includes a bunch of dance movements somewhere in the middle. So those are for, let's see, strings, oboes, and horns. Then we have CD 19. Look, Benjamin Britten's Sinfonietta. There we go, something modern. Paul Hindemith's Octet. Oh my goodness. Well, that's exciting. That's from, 65. Then we have another Spohr Nonet. And Spohr's double quartet. Number 3 in E minor. These are some of Spohr's best chamber works. They're much better than his string quartets because he has such a good time opposing these two string quartets as like, two choirs competing with each other. They're lovely works. Really lovely. And then Mendelssohn's Sextet in D major. Well, that's rare. The sextet's a lovely piece too that nobody does. It's early Mendelssohn. He was like, I don't know, 10 when he wrote it or something, 12. But it doesn't matter with Mendelssohn. It was like Mozart. He was a genius anyway. Then we have the Borodin Piano Quintet in C minor, which is missing its first movement, by the way. It only consists of the last 3, which are fine. Then Konrad and Kreutzer's Grand Septet finally gets a stereo recording. Remember, it's where we began. And the Berwald Grand Septet, which is a wonderful work. Berwald was a terrific composer who had quite the interesting life. His dates were 1796 to 1868. So he was quite around when Beethoven was around, and he died with like Berlioz and those people. And he wrote, of course, the Symphonie Singulière, which is one of the great romantic symphonies, his 3rd symphony. It's absolutely brilliant. And symphonic poems, like Before Liszt. He was inventive, fascinating Swedish composer who wound up, I think, as a mushroom farmer or something like that. Anyway, that's CD 22. CD 23, we're coming to the end. Dvorak's String Quintet with double bass. This is a wonderful performance. I remember when it used to be available on like Decca Stereo Treasury or something like that, when it was hard to find these pieces. I mean, the Dvorak double bass quintet wasn't regular stuff. And so that was, I think, the only one available. I think it may have been coupled with the Borodin at that point. I don't remember exactly. Then we have the Spohr Quintet in C minor for piano and winds, another delightful piece for piano, flute, clarinet, bassoon, and horn. The Beethoven String Quintet in C major, which doesn't get a lot of play, because it's a singleton work. And we've got, let's see, the Sextet in E flat major, opus 81B, by Beethoven. Dvorak's String Sextet, which is also brilliant and doesn't get a lot of play because regularly constituted string sextets don't exist. You have to find either quartets that hire a couple extra people or octets that demote a couple of people and kick them out for that performance. And the Dvorak E flat major string quintet, that's the American quintet, the sequel to the American quartet. Oh, it's full of all those great songs, great tunes. And the scherzo, the second movement, is a real hoedown. I mean, it sounds like, proto-Copland. It's just amazing. CD 26, Henk Boddings, Dutch composer, his octet. And Egon Veles, a Viennese sort of atonalist guy, his octet. So those are fun. And CD 27, the last one. The last Mendelssohn Octet from 1972, and the Rimsky-Korsakov Quintet in B flat for piano and winds, another real rarity in the West anyway. So when this was out, that was great. And then after 72, they became the new Vienna Octet, or somewhere after that. We'll get to that when we get to it. But there you have it. Now, I understand that there's a lot of duplication here, but one of the beauties of these productions from Eloquence is that, first of all, they are complete, number one. Number two, it's interesting to hear the comparison in terms of stylistics between, ensembles made up of different people over decades, to hear how they played. And these are lovely performances. I mean, if you are a fan of large chamber ensemble works, which I am, I just love these pieces, then this is essential. And you're not going to care about the duplication. And you get it while you can, because once it goes, it will probably be gone for a goodly amount of time. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.